WD can tell you a lot. We can tell you that. We already collect that information. But I'm not sure it fits in a high school accountability piece.
No.
Now, when high school principals tell you they're partially responsible for the success of their graduates, yes. I mean, yes. But is it appropriate to land in an accountability piece? First of all, we don't have a mechanism in the state to track out-of-state workers. So if you have a worker and they go to Chicago, you're out of luck. You're a failure. Strike one. So that's a problem. If you have a student who goes out of state up here, they go, you Chicago, strike two. So there are a lot of pieces of it that are concerning because it is heavy in that 6, I heard 9 months, but right now the language is 6 months. That is something that we brought up about the realistic part of that. You can be super successful as a school and get a child to IU and life happens. And you can't control some of that, whether the kid gets ill, whether they just can't get it together, whether they found partying, whatever the case may be, and they don't make it. You are responsible. It's your accountability. So we're struggling with 1404 high school principals. If you haven't looked at it, it's going to give you some heartburn. It really is very limiting, but it's very heavy in programs. Heavy in programs. It doesn't care about graduation rate. It doesn't care about that. It cares about programs. And so we philosophically have a problem that we moved from student performance to programs. So I think you have to pay attention to how we're doing in those programs as a state, absolutely, as we're funding things. But you all know right now that accountability system is sending the message that we're worried about the next 4 years. And I keep saying we're worried about the next 4 decades for a kid. We can't worry about the next 4 years. We're trying to prepare them with great skills forever. So it's just been interesting. But the post-graduation evaluations in 1404, you really do need to pay attention to it. The teachers are not underpaid. Well, yeah. Okay, so this is about their legislators are saying the teachers aren't underpaid, and with the cost of living, we're giving them a lot of data. And you do have some General Assembly people paying attention to the rate of inflation, what's happening with there's such a disparity in pay across the state for beginning teachers and top of the scale teachers. There's a lot moving on. Now, I think it's a good thing we're starting to have a conversation again about the steps. You know, as far as your experience and your degrees, that's coming back without that 33% weighing in on that when you're trying to do that compensation model. So there are some good things happening. The conversation about teachers are already, they're not underpaid. They're doing some comparison to other professions and really pulling that up and getting aggressive. So they're looking at, look at a nurse at this years of experience, they worked how many days a year, look at a teacher. So they're starting to do those comparisons. I would push back, and many of you are pushing back too. We've provided them the data we can provide, but we can't do that alone. You all have a voice. Many of your superintendents have used that voice. Many of your CFOs, many of your teachers have used that voice. We can't have that conversation alone. What they don't love is when they get canned emails. So if your organization says, we're going to send out this email, everybody hit send, they will delete. They don't even look at it. You have to craft it in a good way where you are talking about your community. Be very concise in your bullets. Don't get wordy. No dissertations. I mean, keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it factual. That's what they're looking for. But I know that's going on. I think when monies get tight, the easiest thing to do is to start fighting back going, you already get paid enough. Or you're already getting paid as well as Midwestern states. I mean, that whole rhetoric's changing again. Because if they can't find the money, and they're getting nervous about finding the money, you just start saying whatever someone else will buy. So you all know that. I know it's getting pretty noisy in the papers and things too about that. But yes, that rhetoric is going on. What trainings are available for the dyslexia mandate? Yeah, we are working on that. I mean, as a department, the dyslexia came through. Obviously, there are a lot of pieces attached to that. We were a little bit worried because we heard that there was going to come, in addition to dyslexia, some other like autism, the same type of like you screen everybody. And I'm like, okay, I'm a special ed teacher, that makes 0 sense. But there were pieces of that that were coming through. That has died down. But we do have training available, and I think I have an email, and we will get with you about the dyslexia training. A lot of it's posted on our website, but we have a gentleman at our department who is specifically for that, and so we will make sure we hook them up with you. That's a lot. Student attendance. Yeah, this is about parent accountability, and I don't know who wrote this, but I do 100% agree with you, because right now we're talking about chronic absenteeism, watching that absenteeism. Schools can do, very honestly, I hate to say this, you battle it. You make the calls, you're doing the home visits, you're tracking down the letters of incapacity, you're working with your probation officers. It's hard. I mean, it's tough. If you have a student who's not showing up to school, sometimes you can't find them. I mean, that's the reality of it. They're very mobile. Sometimes they're with dad, sometimes they're with mom, sometimes they're with whatever. So it is tough, but the parent accountability piece, I will say, in some states that's gone a little further than it will never. In Indiana, that's probably not ever going to enter into that, because you start getting into home. So I agree. It's a huge problem as far as keeping those people responsible. I think that all goes back to, a lot of it goes back to data sharing, because a part of this is if we're limited in that area, you have to have data that's available to share. So if you have students who, got arrested last night, you didn't even know they were on probation, you have no idea where they are. Some of you have good relationships with those partners, and sometimes your parents will not let you know that. Some of you are struggling with that. We're trying to do better partner share, so at least that parent knows you have the whole picture. But it's tough. I'm not going to pretend I have the answers to that, but I understand that is a big frustration. Well, this is about a statewide teacher strike potential, about how public schools, how are we going to support what they need to be effective. Obviously I can't go around and tell you to do something illegal. But I do understand the frustration in other states. I mean, you're watching cities like LA Unified and Oakland's getting ready to go, and they're walking away with some sweet deals. So I know people are watching things. I would never say go out and do, I'm not being a huge proponent of that, but I also know too, there is a way you can use your voice. There is a way you can use your voice, and again, I think we're woefully underusing it. You have powers in numbers, and I even go back to the day, Dr. Bennett and Superintendent Ritz is a perfect example of when educators mobilize, they mobilize. And so people are very cognizant of that, but you have to have organized mobilization. I'm not saying that means in a strike, but that also means you have a voice to vote, which brings me to my position. So my position will become an appointed position here in the next 2 years. That bill's going to go through, so don't get your hopes up. It's going to go through. So that position will become, my position will become appointed. Indiana will be unique in that there is very little voter voice other than the governor into my position. Many other states either have like the Senate confirmation, like the governor gives their choice and there's a confirmation, or it's done through a state board that's in a voted elected board. There's some type of voice other than one person, the governor's position. I keep telling people, pay attention. And I don't care what political affiliation you are, it's irrelevant to me, but here's what I will say, pay attention. If that next governor race comes and someone doesn't say, this is who I'm running with, to send you the signal of to inform you of their philosophy of education, it's going to tell you a lot. It's going to tell you a lot. If that question is not answered, I would start paying attention to it. That is the question, because if you watch the last governor's race, very little conversation about education. Very little, very little conversation. However, when my position becomes an appointed position, and that person, whomever the governor would be, is going to have great power over education and what happens to the future of public education, I certainly would start asking some questions. We give people a lot of passes. They didn't give me a pass when I was running for office. People were like, you're the next thing coming from Satan. I was like, okay. But I didn't get a pass. I would just say, well, why are we giving a pass to the highest position in the state? I would just ask questions. Again, I don't care what political affiliation you are. Ask questions. We need some answers of who are you running? It's just, or what are your beliefs? What are you thinking? Because that is going to be extremely, extremely important this next election. Got off on a tangent there. Situation where special needs. Okay, so I'll get with you on the bullying special needs question. So we got your contact? Nope. Whoever wrote this on the bullying special needs question, see me, and we will make sure we chat. Any other questions? I don't know where I'm not talking. No?
Are you planning on running for governor?
Yeah, no. I appreciate that. I appreciate it. You know, if you paid attention to my last campaign, I wasn't super good at raising money for a lot of reasons. But I appreciate it. I know, I mean, I appreciate it. But right now, I mean, I will serve the state in some capacity for kids because I believe in what we do. And I think Indiana has great opportunity. I mean, I really do. But right now, I would say no. But I appreciate that's very nice. Like tomorrow morning when I'm upstairs at the General Assembly, I'm really going to hunt you down. Any of you running for governor? I learned a lot about how to run a campaign. I'm like, I'm in for you. I wasn't very good at it, but learned a lot.
Any other questions?
Yes.
I know that they just did a count on February 1st, and charter schools, as far as I remember, everyone has to do that count on February 1st. What data do we have that students who went to charter in September remained in those charters or have not left? Because I would be curious to see if the charters are holding that money and then removing students or telling them to go back to their public schools, or how can we find out that information, because that's very good information to have.
Yeah, we have that. We have all that information because, honestly, we have General Assembly asking for it. We're watching a mobility report. So what we're really watching is kind of after that first count day, who stays and who goes. Because that second count day today is kind of it doesn't have money tied to it. So we're watching that information. We're watching who's popping from traditional charters to virtual charters or traditional publics, the non-pubs. We're watching those numbers the best we can. Right now, it's sometimes hard because we have homeschool in that mix too, which we have a large population of Indiana homeschoolers that are popping in and out of that mix too. But we have all that we have presented, because what we hear a lot of is you all take, I say you all, the public schools take the money and then you encourage them to go elsewhere. But when we look at the data, that's really not the story. So we wanted to make sure that, yeah, mobility happens. Absolutely, mobility happens. But sometimes there's certain people that want it to be perceived that we're kicking them all out. You know, you take the money, you kick them out. But really, if you look at the data, it's not showing that. So we have it all. We'd be happy to share it. It's not a big secret, but we have all of that data. Yeah, it's a good question. We've been sharing a lot of data.
Could you clarify something for me? When
Yeah.
you talked about the this game of, it's like a board game, the township,
Yeah.
the grab. Is this a school within another township, or is this within the same township where a district can kind of do a Pac-Man thing on it?
Yeah, that District A would be its own district. District B. District B is a separate district.
Within the same township?
Nope. So the township doesn't overlap. So in the scenarios that we're seeing, it would be a township that's 100% within District B that would be kind of captured and brought over to District A. So there may be a sharing of students because of open enrollment, but it's within District B's district. So there are shared townships that'll be interesting on how does that play out. But what we're seeing is literally townships that are 100% within a different district would then get annexed into a new district. But remember, there's nothing that relinquishing school district can really do. That's what gets so interesting about it. Like it really does get interesting. Now, if there's a school building on that, that's where it also gets layered up.
Well, what is the thought process behind this?
Greed.
And here's the thing. Well, and here's the thing. I mean, honestly, it's sometimes in the state you have situations where someone has an appetite for that, and they're trying, and maybe in that area they want to do it. But when you write it that broad, it becomes. I would hope that we wouldn't see a whole lot of that. But I will tell you, when you have districts that are declining in enrollment, you have school boards upset, You have people that are like, we're already transporting those kids, go get them, you know, go get their operation funds, go get their tax base. You will have some of that. So that was what we were trying to say. You got to be careful with that. I mean, it really could get quite interesting that if you take a small district and you pull 400 kids out of a 800-person district, you're done. I mean, 50% of your kids are gone, and it happens fast. The other part of that I didn't mention, because we're trying to figure some things out, like how do you not do this way, but this is the way the bill's written. Once the District A and the township say go, and the relinquish these schools like what just happened, it goes to the state board, which is a whole other conversation. It goes to the State Board of Education for them to review the plan that District A and the relinquish or in that little township had. And if the state board says, yeah, that's a good plan, then they go. If they say that's not a good plan, then there's kind of a process that people can fight it either way. But the only people that could fight it in the relinquishing District B are just the people who reside in that township, which could be very minimal in some of our areas. But you can have a building sitting there. You can have a lot of kids going to that school, but they don't all live there.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. And then where does that stop? So if District A wants Township A, Township B, Township C, so
does it also work the other way, like some of the other states where people are disenfranchising people of color in other communities that they are actually kicking out and refusing to serve in? Yeah, we were seeing some of those occasions of schools saying, yeah, you can go over here. We don't really want you in our district anymore.
Whether it's open enrollment or not.
It's like they are just like literally taking communities of color and saying, you can go be in this district now.
And that could happen if you have an agreement with District A and District B. If District A says, hey, we want you, and District B says, go, take them. That could happen. We're not with open enrollment. I mean, obviously, if they're within your district, public schools have to take the child with a couple little minor maybe nots. But many of our districts are taking open enrollment. That's what we were saying. If they already have open enrollment for a lot of our schools, that's already happening. But to capture, because, and this CFOs know this, that AV piece, if you take a big township and that's got your significant AV in it, your assessed valuation, and a building, I mean, the layers of that become, how do you even start wrapping your mind about how to plan for that? It's a lot. Ms. Holly?
According to the question I asked, is it in follow-up on CTE licensing? I reached out to our legislative affairs team, and they said that House Bill 1002 says that a school or secondary location school may employ instructors who does not have a license if they meet a certain occupational training requirement. Is that the bill number you need?
Yeah, so 1002 is the bill that doesn't require a teaching license for CTE. Yeah.
Forgive me if I missed this when I walked in, but all the information you shared with the slides and your presentation, is that on the Department of Education website, or where do we access all this?
So Holly, who was a kindergarten teacher, first grade teacher, tech director extraordinaire, now comms director, she will get it to Dr. Lutz. Can we get it?
Yeah.
Who do we need to get it
Yeah,
to?
we can put it on
We
our
can
page.
put it
We'll
on our
page.
website, on
We will
our
get it.
Facebook page.
On the Northwest Indiana Coalition for
Sure.
Public
Yeah,
Education.
Yeah.
Is that-
Mhm.
okay.
We can get that to you.
And we we made a webcast too, and we're doing this too, so everything will be there too.
What's the current climate with the state board and yourself?
Great.
Super duper.
So it's interesting. I mean, I'm no longer the chair, which is a beautiful thing. But I was the chair for 2 years. The chair position is honestly irrelevant because it was a matter of approving an agenda, but when I showed up at the meeting, it usually changed anyway. And so, but there was really no big relevance to it other than the stressor of running, making sure you keep people corralled. And so now, you know, that has shifted and we have new chairs, and it really honestly is irrelevant. But that governance structure is really hard. And it's not hard because of I'm in that position. I don't care who's in this position. Glenda went through it. and you know, she had good intent, but it was hard on her, and I 100% understand why. I mean, it is tough because the governance structure doesn't make sense. So I came from local superintendent where I had a board, you have your superintendent, that relationship works different. This is nothing like that, nothing like that. So it is an appointed board, primarily from the governor's office, with with myself, and then the speaker has one, the pro tem has a person, and so it's really the governor's board. So there, and I get it. That's where if the next, regardless of the next governor's race, the governor will have a lot of power. If they keep the state board in place, it's really the governor's board, and then my office will become the governor's position. I mean, it will be heavy, heavy, heavy. That's where you have to pay attention and ask questions about what is your philosophy toward public education? What's your philosophy on funding public education? What's your philosophy on how that board operates? Because, I mean, it's difficult, and it's not what I would argue what's best for any of us. I mean, it's just difficult. So, that.
Would you stay on if you were appointed?
Should the state superintendent stay on if they're appointed?
No, I mean, if the next governor,
Oh, that's cute.
if it's state.
They're from the same school district. We begging.
I mean, it would depend on who the person appointing is. So I think it's important for that alignment. I think education is extreme. I mean, it's all like all of you. I mean, you believe in what we do. I believe in public education. I believe in our kids and our educators, and that person would have to be aligned to that belief. And so it would depend. It would, but thank you. You guys teamed up, didn't you?
No, didn't get the first thought.
Yeah.
We're friends.
Not mine now.
Earlier, you addressed teacher retention, and you talked about 35% of teachers leaving the profession within years 1 through 5.
Yeah.
Do you believe that House Bill 1008 that was written by Benning effectively addresses that issue? And if so, how can this be funded other than by grants? House Bill addresses career ladders.
Yeah. So, first of all, let me say, with the 35% that leave between 1 and 5, when we survey those folks, 88% of it was by pay. But then the next second tier was just working conditions. And this isn't a blast on administrators. It's the job is hard. Mm-hmm. So acknowledging that right off the bat. So getting that out there. We have shared all that information, all of our survey data, all that. Do I think it will come up with a solution to that? I think anytime we can have career ladders that helps develop teacher leaders is not a bad thing. But at a time where the monies are so tight, and I'm watching a lot of our bills go through with big price tags on them, like if you have all that money, you stick it in the formula. Stick it in the formula. Many of you are finding creative ways to fund those teacher leadership activities. And I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but it's hard for me when I'm watching one of the bills go through right now has about a $5 million price tag on it, and we have the exact same thing we can do right now that we've been doing for 2 years. Well, what are we doing? Give me that $5 million on the basic tuition support. So I have to push back a little bit that the intent is good, the idea is not bad, but if we have money for that at a time where we are hearing there's no money, put it on basic tuition support and then let local people make decisions. Mm-hmm. So that's where I get a little bit, if we got the money for this and this and this and this, you start adding this and this and this and this up, put it toward basic tuition support, get that up. So we'll see.
Thank you.
Where is it with the school calendar and start date?
We're not hearing much of that. It's the same thing that comes back every time about after Labor Day and the whole cursive writing from a may to a shall. So, but we're not hearing a lot of conversation about it. I don't think it will get much traction, but it always comes up. Yeah, it's workforce related. Interesting on that same note, if you're paying attention, like the high school folks that have kids that are employed and have to get their work permits and all that, if you're watching that, wow, it's a bill impacting child labor laws, basically. Yeah. That's another interesting one where it's kind of a free-for-all. So, wow. Not that I'm opposed to kids working. I worked as a high schooler and worked a lot, but that's an interesting bill.
Since the job of educating
children of Indiana is really one of the main things the state should be doing. Why should communities have to beg for money with referenda?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. I wish I had the answer to that, but I will say some of the meetings I've been having, they're very, very direct in letting me know they're not super convinced that we're wise with our spending. I would push back that you have a lot of schools that have been very efficient with their spending and very wise with their spending, but their revenue does not look like it used to look. And so their solution is you've got the revenue, you've got the mechanism for referendum, and now Senator Holman's been a good partner, so I don't want this to seem negative, but now we have a third option for referendum if it goes through, which it probably will, for safety. So we've got operating, you've got construction, and you would have a safety referendum, which I would think a safety referendum in most of our communities may have more luck. But again, you're creating the haves and the have-nots with some of our referendums. So I know it's difficult. I have the same questions you're asking. I don't have a good answer for you, but I think those are the very questions that we need to start asking folks who are getting elected. Like, what is your stance on referendums? What is your stance on funding us adequately and equitably? And so those are the questions, but I don't have a good answer for you, but I will be, I've sit in meetings where they're telling me it's my problem because I'm like, for them, I'm you. It's my problem because we all need to figure it out. Well, it's hard. So I don't have a good answer for you, but that is really, we've heard from a lot of higher up political position people saying that is your answer. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't.
You referenced the social emotional piece. Has there been any more research on the trauma? Our area up here is getting a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
Back and forth. You know, the kids come and then they go. And they come and then they go. And I'm starting to see a shift in pre-K to kindergarten. It's just huge.
Yeah. So that trauma-informed care piece is big. And so the department has been better at being at the table for those conversations across agency because you have pockets. Like if you're in Marion County, you have a lot of access to some care. You get out across the state, and that doesn't always look like that. And so many of you have dealt with that. Like, okay, I got this kid in crisis, and the connection to care, for a lot of different reasons, is really hard. So there is more conversation going on. I would say we're probably not as far along as we should be because it's impacting all of us. But the good thing is it's moving. It's moving in the right direction. But
have they considered, since they're kind of forcing us into a referendum type of thought process, we're deeply exploring that right now at our district, which is in Elkhart, with a brand new superintendent and high schools that will be merging within the next 2 years. And we've had a lot of asks lately of our community. Our biggest pushback is our farmers, because of their property piece. Have they considered helping us be more successful with our referendum by possibly putting a cap on the amount of land or whatever our farmers would have to pay? We don't want to put them out of business trying to cover these referendums. And we have our district's unusual, very rural, very urban, very big and spread out. And so we just have, it's going to be a tough sell.
I'm not hearing that, but I don't think it's a bad thing to start thinking about some language that if you think what possibly, and I'm not saying you get specific because that's a big ask, but maybe some of those, like what would that look like, or at least talking to your General Assembly members to say, have you thought of this? I think that's a good question. I think it's something you probably need to start reaching out now. You're not alone in that, and we'll probably help a lot of districts in that same scenario, but that's what I'm hearing when people say, I've got this and this and this, and I know it's going to be an uphill battle that's like this.
Yeah.
And so you weigh those options and are like, I'm going to kill my administrative staff, I'm going to kill my teaching staff, I'm going to, it is a huge lift to run those referendums. But I think it's a great question. I've not heard anybody really entertain that, but I would encourage you to start asking. I think that's a great question. it helps us too.
Any other districts? Come on, let's start.
I'll tell you, there are in power in numbers, and they know when I say something, it's kind of like now they're just like getting aggravated at me right now. But when you all say something, because they know you are extremely connected and respected in your districts. They know that. You know families, they know you, they usually you're highly respected. If you email with ideas or you go to your General Assembly, that goes miles, because then they tell me, hey, what are you doing? You get people stirred up. I'm like, I didn't get people stirred up, you're getting people stirred up. So we have that conversation. But it goes a long way if you reach out and say, hey, let's rethink some things here, or have you thought of this? It comes very different when it comes from you, because you are connected to their voters. So don't underestimate that.
I'm from a rural community too. My brother has been local president of the Farm Bureau and so forth. If you might partner with the Farm Bureau, they would be happy to get a cap.
Might be on your team.
Thank you.
Jennifer, 2 counties remain in the state that will not experience the full circuit breaker impact until 2020. You've shown the success and failure rates or attempt rates with the new fiscal indicators that are coming out by DUAB, because they're going to keep a pulse on everyone.
Yeah.
Could we formulate something, because I can tell you exactly when DUAB will probably have to come to my school district, because we cannot pass a referendum. So if we do have those numbers to say, hey, look, for those that are saying, I'll just go get a referendum, and you just never can, because we know that's our statistic. That could be the force that says, okay, here's how many school districts and when you're going to have to take them over.
Well,
I mean, you know what I mean? I don't know if that number would help them, because DUAB's going to call, I mean, they're going to have those indicators, so that might help us.
Right.
But,
that the fiscal indicators are that piece that your superintendents or your CFOs are going to submit information, and then your distress unit appeals board is going to look at that information based on what's submitted. They're going to look at those fiscal indicators, and they're going to determine if you're in trouble or not, if you're on a watch list, if you're in corrective action. But I would also caution in 1003, I think, in 1003, that gets even more aggressive. So I'm saying let the fiscal indicators play out. And I think you're right. I think we could probably project out to say, hey, you're getting 20 coming at you. Because that is a big lift. And I can tell you, superintendents and people know, CFOs know, they're coming for us. And okay, I mean, we know they are, so you might as well come on and get it. The other piece is you have to go in front of the state board and basically get publicly shamed that they don't have any authority or power to help you. So I have a problem with a district having to go before a board. I'm okay with DUAB because those fiscal indicators are supposed to help you. They're supposed to be proactive in partnership with the School Boards Association, or with the School Business Association. But on the other one, it's you go in front of the school board, the State Board of Education, and you get publicly shamed, but they don't have the capacity to help you. So that's just a public meeting to say, we didn't hit 85-15%. And we didn't hit fiscal indicators, and we didn't, it's just, like, really? So that piece, I think you're right, providing as much data as we can up front to say, get ready, and then let inform some of those comments we're hearing about. Referendum's your answer. I mean, honestly, and if you've been to any of, our business officials just had a conference, and our school board just had a conference, and literally they said, the people who were addressing them about fiscal were saying, you have an answer, it's go run a referendum. And I hear that all the time. I mean, that's the answer you're getting. We don't have the money. We don't have the revenue. We're not going to spend out of our surplus. Go run a referendum. So it is. I think you're right. If we're smart about how to provide the data to help inform that, the smarter we are with that, probably the better off we'll be. Because I think you're right. We can pretty much tell them what's going to happen.
What is the conversation around consolidation? Because some of our school districts are never going to pass a referendum. And the answer, we have been downstate, and we've listened to what the legislators said. They said, oh, well, if your community doesn't value education, oh, well. And my question back to them was, and so what about my children that deserve equity what do I do? But then, you know, it keeps coming back to that point of consolidation. And then I go, consolidate with who? You don't want me over here. You're failing over here. Where do I go?
So let's go back to 421. So 421 is that piece where there's not consolidation ever mentioned in 421. But you're right, because if you have a district that has pockets of kids that look pretty good on paper, I hate to say it, but you can cherry pick areas now. So there's no mention of consolidation, but what would that be then? Consolidation. Well, what is that? So I think that's where it's coming out without coming up. When I read it, that's where I went. Like, this is really pretty creative because the word never comes up. But if you pay attention, now I'm not just consolidating, I'm picking. Like, I want this group from this territory. I'm doing my homework. Like, this area, no, I want them. I want this. You know, you can start cherry picking townships. So there's not a whole lot. There's an incentive pot of money to consolidate, but that 421, I think, is that.
Okay.
Are we getting close on time? You guys have to go.
Whatever you want.
Yes.
And the impact, financial impact on public.
Healthy. Healthy. And the reason why I'm saying that, she asked, what do I see the future of our charter schools? Given where we are with our ed leadership, not this ed leadership, but the ed leadership in the House and in the Senate, if it stays the same,
They're going to keep giving them money.
it's going to be healthy. Yes. Mm-hmm. Because when we start pushing back on quality control, the conversation on quality matters. If you're going to have school choice, let's hope it's good. Like, honestly, we have visited schools that put in for, like, they want to become a school, and we go visit, and I've had our staff come back and go, well, it's in the back of a taco stand. I'm like, what? So, I mean, like, you can't even make it up. And so we laugh about that, but I want you to think about, they're taking finances, and the kids in the back of the taco stand probably aren't going to stay there forever. Where do you think they're going to go?
Back to public school.
They're going to come to your cohort high school principals and go, we got nothing. So that's what, I mean, the quality piece of it, I'm like, so we're just willy-nilly doing it? The ones who are worried about quality, like I said, the Mayor of Indianapolis charters, I mean, it's tight to even get an authorizer. I mean, to get an operator. And they're doing pretty well comparatively. But when you start looking across the state, how Indiana has just, it's choice for the sake of choice, it's free market. We just approach that differently. When I go to other states, they're like, you people are crazy. And they just tell me. They're like, you have got to tighten that down because it's so expensive. Well, I can't tighten that down. That's outside of my authority. But the people who can tighten it down, we don't ask them that question when campaigns are going on. We don't ask them. It's a great question.
Just like looking at the big picture, and for me, I'm a former teacher, so now I'm just a regular citizen. And how do you, like, what's your best advice?
We want you back. Yeah, no, go back.
But what's your best advice to disseminate this information to the general public? You know, we're talking about moms and dads and grandparents who are overloaded, working multiple jobs, and they're just trying to get by. But how do you convey that their greater forces at work of privatization? You know, we're breaking down the public good here, right? I mean, that's what this is. They're taking away something that is for the public good. And we can talk about House Bill 1003 and 421, but it's all about privatizing. It's all about breaking up public schools, breaking unions, and taking away the fabric of our community. How in easy to digestible chunks do we bring this over to the general public? Talking to those moms and dads, talking to our neighbors. What is your advice for that?
I think your best avenue, honestly, is social media. So many of you are connected on social media, and I know that gets dicey when you start getting some of those social media. I don't do Facebook for a lot of reasons, but some of you who do, that is a good avenue to share snapshots of information. If you start layering that, just people aren't, but if once in a while you put some out, did you know X? Sharing that information I don't think is ever a bad thing, but I think that social media is powerful. So we have people who use it better than others, but also being strategic about so you don't look crazy with it. And you look reasonable with it, but it's those interesting, we tried to do that with our priority pitches and put out little factual things and just put them out there. And I'll be honest with you, on our social media, teachers don't love that. They don't love it when I get political on them. I see social media, they're like, stop it. But when I say something fluffy, they're like. So it's interesting. Seriously.
Just about kidding with it, whatever you
So
put out
I
there.
get it because that's kind of who we are. Now superintendents don't do that. I say something political like retweet. So it's just interesting. So, but I think social media is big. And I always said if we get organized in a manner that really is smart, boy, I mean, it could be really a force, but it is informing people. My sister's a nurse, and when I tell her something, she's like, you gotta tell people that. Nobody knows that. And I'm like, okay. But I understand why it's that frustration of you have significant knowledge of what's going on, and most people don't have it. And it's hard to spread it without looking like you're just feeling sorry for ourselves or we're complaining. I think sharing the facts, like, did you know X? Did you know Y? And it's just, like I say, facts are stubborn. People sometimes don't like them. But I think the social media part would, it would take an organized effort to do it well. And I think it can be done. I mean, I really do. I mean, I don't know what you're doing now, but since you're not teaching, you may have free time.
I know that woman. She has no sleep. She's doing Medicare for all.
No, you don't have free time.
Geez. Yeah, you don't have time.
You don't have free time. Yeah.
I want to piggyback on what she was saying, because I keep asking myself, what is the incentive of the government to privatize education?
Money.
They're donors. But they want that control of that education. But they're not controlling, there aren't those layers of control in private education in charter schools.
They want to control that.
You break it after you
Is that
told
what I'm
everyone
saying?
it's broken, and then you can sell it.
Look at Gary.
The real roots of it started after Brown v. Board of Ed, and when people found out that they had to integrate their schools, they decided they were going to make a separate parallel system of schools, and that's where it started. And you cannot, from my opinion, walk away from the ultimate roots of where that started.
The reality, honestly, that we can't forget, anytime you're over half of a state's budget, we're 54% of the state's budget. We are expensive. We're $8 billion a year and another $1 billion in federal monies. So we're $9 billion a year. Anytime you are half of the state, any budget, when you're over half of that, you have all eyes on you to reduce that and to fix that. And so it's interesting because just the sake of vouchers, that program was put in place for at-risk kids who needed to get out of F schools. Now we're learning about 2% have even been in an F school, and it's really going to suburban white. And so we're watching that program, but that's that mentality of free market. Let people choose, they're paying taxpayer dollars. It's just a different philosophy, and it really goes back to choice and how do you get those costs down. And they believe, I mean, it's no different than, we promoted virtual charters. You fund those at 90%, you're getting those costs down. So there's a lot to do with the money tied to it. There's a lot to do with philosophy of it. But I have still a lot of meetings where they are very quick to tell me we are not getting the job done, no matter how much they give us. And
They're not, virtual schools and charter schools are definitely not getting the job done. So
some. I mean, some are. They're performing well, but many of them aren't.
Many of them. So that's what I don't understand.
Yep, that's right.
What do they want, the money or the job?
They're funded differently. So they don't get operation monies. They don't get property tax monies. So they are a cheaper way to educate students of Indiana.
But if they're not educating well.
I'm just, I agree with you. But they're getting those costs. I mean, you're really looking at how to get those costs down.
Over the education?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, I'm losing everybody.
All right.
So lastly, I know people are going and I get you're all busy, but I want to thank you. I know many of you are still in the trenches. Thank you for you who are putting up the good fight. Thank you. Do not hesitate to reach out to our office. We don't get it all right. If we're getting something wrong, do not be shy. Many of you aren't. So let us know. But thank you again for having us up, and I appreciate everything you're doing.
Before you go, just a couple things. One is the very first word that Dr. McCormick threw out to this evening was complacency. And you've heard a vast number of bills, Senate bills and House bills. Some of those apply to some of you very particularly. You know the process that right now bills are getting ready to be finished and voted on either in the House or the Senate. If there's a bill that you're concerned about, do something about it. Get other people to do something about it right now. Now what's going to happen is they're going to settle. For example, the House has already passed the bill about the state superintendent becoming appointed, and also about saying that there is no requirement for education background. That's going to the Senate. That battle has got to be fought. Jennifer McCormick's expertise in education has spoken for itself. Imagine somebody that doesn't have that expertise being assigned, as we've seen has happened on the national level. These battles have got to be fought. And Dr. McCormick is right. We do not do a good job of organizing ourselves and taking action and getting our opinions known and arguing about it and getting it out there. Where can you go? Somebody asked the question, where can you go to get information? I'm telling you, ICPE puts out a newsletter, puts out information on all of these important bills. And they're going to coalesce in March and April, and there's going to be key bills that are going to need people to vote on and have input on. Get to the website, get to the Facebook page, NWICPE. If anybody wants to get more involved, we're having a meeting tomorrow night at 7 o'clock at Merrillville Intermediate School. We'll welcome you to come and participate and be involved in that. So once again, let's not be complacent. Stay informed and get other people to be informed.
Our next monthly meeting is actually tomorrow, so if you don't feel like you got enough of us, you're all welcome to come to Merrillville Intermediate School, so not here, at 7 p.m. tomorrow night. We meet the first Thursday of the month at 7 p.m.
And we're always looking for help.
And come hang with us.
Yes, come hang with us.
Thank you very much.